Here we go.
All right, welcome. We are on lesson 3. Welcome back. This is the third meeting of Prevent T2, the CDC's lifestyle change program. Today, we are going to talk about tracking your activity to prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. But before we start, just our thing we have to say at all these recordings is that the CDC guidelines requires that you have direct interaction with your lifestyle coach at each session. So currently that's Angie or me. After this recording, you contact either of us and schedule a short call to review this session. So in our objectives, we're going to go over the purpose of tracking and also how to track your activity. And you'll also get a chance to practice your activity. And then finally, we'll make a new action plan. So let's start with the purpose of tracking. So the purpose of tracking, first before going into that, you think about, well, we're talking about tracking activity in this lesson, but I want to first start by asking you, what are some of the things that you already track? So some things we don't even think about, but we just normally do would be things like if you have, say, tend to have high blood pressure, you might have a blood pressure cuff, and you have your doctor, have you give you readings for you give your doctor the readings for your blood pressure cuff. You might have a checking account and you want to make sure that you're balancing your checkbook. So that's something a lot of people do. You might look at your report cards of your children or their grades and make sure that they're staying, in where they need to be. Another one is you might be decide to go to the grocery store and you want to look in the refrigerator and you want to see what's in there and you make a list. So that's also kind of a tracking. You might want to check the amount of medicine in a bottle, make sure you don't run out. One that we all use is when we see the gas gauge on our car get near the E, we know it's time to get gas. Another one is the laundry basket gets filled up, so it tells us it's time to wash some clothes. So these are kind of some ideas of things that we typically track without even thinking about it. We just do it. And so you think, well, why do we do this? So the main thing is so we know what actions we need to take to meet our goals. So like we know we need to do the laundry if we want to have clothes to wear. We need to balance our checkbook so we don't run out of money or watch our spending. So it affects our actions. It has a direct effect on the actions we take afterwards. So one thing that we're going to have you do is weigh yourself. So we have you weigh at the beginning of each session. And why do you think we do that? So the main reason we do that is because it helps you work towards your 6-month weight goal. The other thing we introduced last week was something you can do at home, which really helps immensely, is to have a weight graph and put one, say, above your scale. Because in the classes, we just do that one data point. But when you do a graph at home, you're seeing your progress, and that's will really be helpful for you. The other thing is about what we're getting to for this lesson is about tracking your minutes of activity each day. So the question is, well, why do we need to do that? Well, the whole point of this program, as we talked about before, is to get at least 150 minutes of moderate activity each week. Moderate that toxin level. And so by tracking it, it helps you eventually get to that goal of 150 minutes a week. And of course, both of these goals, weight loss and activity, as we've learned, helps to lower your risk of type 2 diabetes.
Okay, so we've talked about why it's important to track your minutes of activity, and now we'll practice or talk about ways to do it. If we were in person, we would do a little exercise, make you guys march in place, and then track that. But since this is a recording, We invite you to maybe march in place if you'd like, but we'll keep moving for the sake of the recording. So tracking your minutes of activity has 2 steps, and those 2 steps are 1, time your activity, and 2, record your minutes of activity. So first we'll start with ways to actually time the activity that you're doing. So you might have a watch, a clock on the wall or on your phone. You might use a timer, whether that's on your phone or stopwatch. You could use a fitness tracker. There are so many different apps on smartphones these days that you could use as well. And then of course, computer apps too. So for example, if we were doing the exercise of marching in place together in person, we would have done that for a few minutes. We would have stopped and then allowed you to write into your fitness log that you walked or you marched in place for however many minutes we timed. So next we'll move on to ways to record your minutes of activity. And we've mentioned the fitness log, so that is a great option that we're able to provide for you. If you need those sheets, we can either email you a copy or print more out for you. But there are, of course, other ways to do this as well, and everyone has their own preference. So here's just a few ideas for you. You could just write it in a spiral notebook. So you can organize it, write it however you'd like. You might do a spreadsheet. Maybe you really like Excel and want to keep track or keep a log on your computer. Again, you could use a fitness tracker. We know that I believe it's MyFitnessPal is very popular for tracking your food and tracking your fitness. Again, smartphone apps, computer apps, and then a voice recording. So that's also another way to do it. So ultimately, we want you to be recording your minutes, right? As you remember, this program asks that you do 150 minutes of activity a week. And then ideally, you would be giving us your fitness log, or if it's not the fitness log we give you, perhaps your spiral notebook or your spreadsheet, and we ask that you would show that to us as well. And so here's an example of that fitness log that we keep talking about. So it's just laid out for you to keep track by the day. So each day of the week, you can track your minutes, and then you can add details about your activity. And maybe you just want to keep that simple for now. We'll certainly get into, in another session, all of the different details that you could be tracking for your fitness. But to start out, just getting in the habit of tracking even just a little bit is key. Another piece to this that we mentioned in one of the previous sessions is this weight graph. So along with your fitness logs, we highly encourage that you keep something like this weight graph, either next to your scale. Maybe you keep it with your fitness log and your food log. Maybe you have all of those together. But it's just another way to kind of measure your progress, and it's a great visual for those of you that really enjoy having those visuals to keep you on track. And then of course we have the reminder that, you know, the long-term success is often built on these small successes. So these tracking measures and these strategies for tracking can be a really great way to help you stay on track for these small successes that then turn into those long-term successes. And so again, we like to list out the resources for you guys so you know what you have if you're at home and away from us or the program. So you have your fitness log that we give you, and then this idea to do the weight graph, that's optional but highly encouraged. And then in your participant guide on page 3, you have how to track your activity, which is what I just kind of walked you through. Identical list, same information there. And then we have on page 4, how to cope with challenges. And I'll hand it over to Sharon to walk us through that one.
Thanks, Angie. So one thing I just wanted to say, and Angie mentioned this as well, but just to kind of bring that point home is a lot of times when people think about tracking and whether it's their weight or their activity, and later we'll talk about your food, it's like there's a resistance to it because it's like, oh my gosh, it's just a lot of work and it's just too much to do. But you don't say this lightly, but the reason you track is because it really helps you reach your goals. There's research that shows this over and over again. They look at people who are losing weight or doing behavior changes and comparing those who actually track what they're doing versus those who do not. And there's a very clear difference in how well they do with the ones who are tracking. So this is why we, encourage you to turn in a fitness log every week and come in to weigh every week. And so all these things add up. So the more you integrate these tracking behaviors into your program, the better success you will have, guaranteed. So let's look at how to cope with challenges. That is on page 4, and Andy has up here as well. So this shows some of the common challenges and ways to cope with them. And so we've seen this type of chart before, which is really helpful because it lists some things that are really a lot of people might use as a reason that they can't track. And so this kind of looks at those reasons and gives you some suggestions. And you also have a place to write your own ideas in the column that says other ways to cope. You can check off each idea you try. So I think a common one is, if you can scroll down to where I don't like to track, that's probably a very most common one. And so what they're saying here is, like put your results on the wall or online, giving yourself a small reward, compete with a friend, sometimes having that camaraderie in something like that, or using a smartphone or computer app to kind of help with this, because there's a lot of smartphone things that do the tracking for you, especially with walking. So that's really helpful. But really kind of just understanding that this is just a really important piece for helping you to reach your goals. All right. Now we are back to the plan for success. So we are going to now go to the action plan. So since this action plan is about keeping tracking your physical activity, I'd like you to come up with an action, at least one action that relates to that. And try to think of that action that is going to be realistic, doable, specific, and flexible. So beyond, I'm going to track my exercise, I am going to walk Monday, Wednesday, Friday on my lunch break for 15 minutes, something like that. So there's a lot more detail. And then also allowing for flexibility. Say if it's raining, what are you going to do instead? The more specific, the more flexible, the more you think you're going to do it, and fun, the better chance you're going to succeed at it. And keep in mind that what worked and what didn't work well for you since our last session. And if there are any changes that you want to make. As we talked about before, how action plans, they are a very movable thing. And so if you have a certain action plan and you say, well, I didn't do that, I'm going to do it again this week. And if you find yourself taking an action and doing that same one over and over again, you might want to revisit the way that action plan is written and break it down into smaller pieces so it's more doable and chance of success. And then also keep in mind what we discussed today about tracking your activity. So the main things for the program we're looking for is recording your minutes, and that's those moderate minutes, which is between that level of talking and singing. And remember, this can be things that you're doing like going outside, raking the lawn, or housework. As long as it's that intensity, that all counts. So put it in the log. And just to close, so that's it. To close, we're going to talk about the purpose of tracking is what we talked about, and also how to track your activity. And so next week, when you come in, bring in your fitness log, your first fitness log. You can look it over. You also get a chance to practice your tracking your activity today. Well, if we did the marching in place, we would have. So next time we'll talk about the things you tried at home, including your action plan. We'll also talk about, the next session will be about how to eat well, planning a meal, and looking at different food groups. So again, to complete this session, please, after you go through this, reach out to Angie or I, write your action plan. And then once we review the session and record your weight and physical activity minutes, you're all done. So thanks for coming to this session, and we'll see you next time.